So we'll go ahead and we'll be respectful of everyone's time. We'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Marcus Thomas. I serve as Senior Program Officer at the Community Foundation, but I also have the wonderful opportunity to serve as Chair for the Young Leaders Cabinet here at the United Way of Greater Greensboro. For those of you who may not be familiar with our Young Leaders Cabinet, our Young Leader members are emerging community leaders who are focused on empowering and inspiring young professionals to lead community-wide change that ends poverty. Our membership is comprised of caring young professionals under 40 who contribute $120 or more annually to the United Way of Greater Greensboro. We are eager to help our community. Our focus and initiatives include supporting the United Way's Cradle to Career Impact area with a focus on helping children and youth prepare for success in college, work, and in life. Today's event will educate and inspire us around that topic. Young leaders volunteer their time to give back in meaningful ways, providing family-friendly activities, collecting books for children, and so much more. Every year in October, we host Trunk or Treat. This event attracts thousands of children and families, as well as dozens of volunteers who decorate their vehicles to provide a safe trunk or treat experience. This event always provides more than just candy. And in fact, last year, this event gave parents an opportunity to receive their COVID-19 shot and or their booster shot. And so we are busy, and we truly know that our efforts are making an impact in this community that we all have an opportunity to work, play, live, and eat in. And so we are excited that you have joined us today, and we're even more excited to hear from our speaker who will challenge and inspire us all to do more for our community. But before we get started, I want to take time to recognize VF for their generous sponsorship of United Way's Theory of Change series. We thank you, VF, for your continuous partnership with the United Way of Greater Greensboro. Also, in case you haven't heard, your United Way is celebrating its centennial anniversary in this community. Since March 1st, 1922, United Way's mission has centered on making this community a better place for all people. In fact, United Way's work has also focused on the importance of bringing the community together to address the greatest needs. And when the caring people of our community ask United Way to address the need, they convene and rally our community to tackle that issue head on. Such was the case when the community informed United Way that poverty was the issue it needed to address. When we collaborate, great things happen, and together we must be bold to address poverty. And as you can see on my t-shirt, this is one of the t-shirts from United Way. It says "End Local Poverty." And so this is one of the key things that this great organization is working on to address. So we want you guys to take a moment to watch a short video to discover how we all can be bold together.
Our community has spoken.
And it's time for all of us to face reality.
The pandemic and the renewed civil rights movement
highlighted real challenges many families face.
And the often overlooked existence of local poverty.
Facts can no longer be disputed.
Poverty is an everyday truth for over 57,000 people in Greater Greensboro.
1 out of every 4 children
In Greensboro is growing up in poverty.
There are neighborhoods in our community
Where over 40% of the population
Have lived in poverty for multiple generations.
Poverty is relentless.
and decades of systemic issues
Have disproportionately impacted people of color.
These facts are unacceptable.
Our community has proven time and time again
that we can accomplish anything when we are united.
That's why for over a year, United Way of Greater Greensboro listened to
And collaborated with thousands of people in our community.
To take our efforts of ending local poverty to the next level.
Together, we developed a bold goal that belongs to all of us.
As a community united in equity and lasting solutions,
3,000 households in Greater Greensboro
Will leave generational poverty by 2030.
Imagine, on average, over 300 households per year.
Leaving poverty over the next 9 years.
At United Way, everything we do is committed to helping people leave poverty.
We collaborate with nonprofits, businesses, leaders,
and caring people from all across our community
to generate collective impact. United, we will achieve the bold goal
by creating and funding strategic partnerships
with proven outcomes
that provide education, training, and support
to help people get jobs that can provide for their households.
We'll continue to operate our nationally recognized family success centers,
where children and adults are receiving coordinated services in one location.
And bold goals require bold innovation.
which is why we're developing a countywide mobile-friendly network
that will connect people to services
and coordinators
who will help them identify,
track, and achieve their personal goals of leaving poverty.
We cannot do this work alone.
It's time to put our collective efforts into building a community that benefits all of us.
Local children, adults, and families need your support.
It's time to be bold.
Visit unitedwaygso.org
To learn more, take action, and make a donation today.
Thank you so much for that video. So, hello, my name is Cammie Cummings, and I serve alongside Marcus as Vice Chair of Young Leaders. I am happy to be with you today. And before we introduce our speaker, we want to provide you with a little more of our framework around why we are here today. As you have just heard, people in our community are facing barriers that are perpetuated by systems that often do not work together for their benefit. It is our responsibility to do what we can to provide resources and supports that make their transitions out of poverty as easy and streamlined as possible. United Way's strategic approach or theory of change to address poverty is based on connecting households in our community to three key areas of service and support. We believe helping youth transition from cradle to career is key. And we believe helping adults land jobs and increase income is key. And we believe providing access to basic needs in healthcare is key. We believe each one of those areas is critical to helping a person transition out of poverty. Some people may need support in all areas. Some people may only need support in one area. But at the end of the day, United Way's strategy is designed to meet someone where they are and to serve their individual needs. As Marcus mentioned today, we will learn more about how local young leaders and the community can work together to prepare youth to be successful in college, work, and life. At this time, please join me in welcoming your United Way of Greater Greensboro President and CEO, Mr. Corey Garvin, who will introduce our speaker.
Well, thank you, Cammie, and good afternoon, everyone. I am really honored to serve as your president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Greensboro. And on behalf of our board of directors, as well as our United Way staff, I want to welcome each of you and just say thank you for joining us today. I have to say that I'm probably the most excited person in our meeting today because I have admired the work of Dr. Jason Purnell really for a number of years. We've even quoted his work in an op-ed that I recently wrote for the Triad Business Journal just a few months ago. And Dr. Purnell, first of all, holds a PhD in counseling psychology from The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. He has a master's degree in public health from the University of Rochester and a bachelor's degree in government and philosophy from Harvard University. He serves on many community boards and committees in his hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, and has participated on the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine's Roundtable on Population Health Improvement. Dr. Purnell is also a former Director of Community Engagement with the United Way of Greater St. Louis. He currently holds a faculty position with Washington University in St. Louis, Brown School of Social Work, where he supports a Health Equity Works initiative. And for the last 2 years, he has additionally served as Vice President of Community Health Improvement for BJC Healthcare, which is a hospital system in St. Louis. Now, as Vice President, he is responsible for the development, implementation, and evaluation of the hospital's community health programs to ensure that they are responsive to community needs. So in case you haven't realized, this guy has a big deal, and we're honored to host him today. Really, really happy to have him join us. Now, back in 2014, when the United Way of Greater Greensboro adopted breaking the cycle of poverty as our main focus, it became clear that our strategy had to be grounded upon a research-based integrated service delivery approach. And by integrated service delivery, or ISD, that system brings together multiple services and allows people in need of support the ability to pick and choose the services that they need in order to reach their personal goals. Research by the Annie E. Casey Foundation indicates that the ISD model improves the odds for families in poverty to achieve a major economic outcomes. For example, increased levels of education or employment, income, and financial stability. All of these sort of factors are increased or enhanced by the ISD approach by a factor of 3 or 4 times. Dr. Jason Purnell's career has been dedicated to this approach, and I hope that you are as excited as I am to learn what he has to say to us today. So please join me in welcoming my friend and yours. Welcome, Dr. Jason Purnell.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I truly appreciate it. It's probably too kind. I think all of you are a big deal as well. But I'm very happy to be with you this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Purnell. We're extremely excited to have you. And so we'll kind of go through kind of what the agenda is going to look like, what we're going to do here during this time together. So we'll start off our program by asking Dr. Purnell a few questions that relate to United Way's work of ending poverty. And also we want to answer some of your questions that you guys may have out in the audience as well. So please submit any questions that you may have in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll do our best to address those questions after our prepared set of questions. Do want to remind you all to please remain muted and courteous during our event today. And so Dr. Purnell, we can get started. I know you have something you want to share with us, so we'll start there.
Yeah, and I hope technology will cooperate with me. Are you all seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Just play it from here. This is another video, so bear with me.
How can people living so close together be so far apart in terms of health? How is it neighboring zip codes can have dramatic differences in wellness, quality of life, and life expectancy? BJC Healthcare is committed to improving the health of our communities, beginning with neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis and North St. Louis County. Community health improvement, working with community to create equal opportunity for physical, mental, and financial well-being for everyone. BJC is using its position as a major employer, purchaser, and investor to boost the economy in areas that have been denied appropriate resources. BJC is working alongside community partners to improve infant and maternal health, increase access to affordable, healthy food options to prevent diabetes, and support schools as they advance both learning and wellness, all to reverse the effects of negative policies that have robbed generations of opportunity. The systems in our society have created wide gaps in health outcomes, but BJC believes they are preventable. Through community health improvement, we will work with community to bring real change that helps everyone achieve a healthy, productive life.
Dr. Purnell, unfortunately, we only saw your desktop.
Oh. That's not good.
It's not. The video sounded great though.
Yeah, we heard it. Yeah.
Heard it for sure.
I'm sorry about that. There's great images too. Do you all have...
You want to continue with the conversation and maybe we'll try it again at the end?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So no, that's okay. It happens. Technology, we all understand. So we want to start off with the first question for you, sir. Can you describe what poverty means to you?
Oh, wow. Poverty means a lack of resources to achieve the full potential and flourishing of individuals and families, but it's an avoidable lack of resources. It's because we haven't distributed resources in such a way that everyone has the opportunity to flourish. Poverty is really a result of the way that we've organized our societies and let it be the case that some people don't have the basic the basic needs that are required for human flourishing.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. So in addition to that, part of your current community health work relates to school wellness by increasing access to services, including mental health supports. Can you kind of describe and elaborate a little bit more on those efforts?
Yes, so I should mention that what you heard and didn't see in the video was the result of our strategic plan. We actually spent about 8 months in strategic planning for community health improvement. This is a new department and a strategic priority for BJC Healthcare. And we have 4 areas of focus. School health and wellness is one of them. We were very intentional about including the community in the strategic planning process. So we had school administrators and local community organizations at the table, in addition to our colleagues in Children's Hospital and our School Outreach and Youth Development department within BJC. And it was very clear from the outset that behavioral health needed to be one of the priorities of the work that we were doing, because we were in crisis prior to the pandemic with respect to child and youth behavioral health outcomes, and the pandemic has just exacerbated that problem. So it's showing up, for instance, in our St. Louis Children's Hospital, where we're seeing the emergency department just overrun with behavioral health concerns. So we will be piloting later this year what we're calling behavioral health and wellness hubs within the community. We are partnering with trusted local institutions where people already have relationships, such as the St. Louis County Public Library, the Boys and Girls Clubs here in St. Louis, and the City of St. Louis's rec centers, to create what I call spaces where people can take a deep breath for both children and youth and their caregivers. So this is really an attempt to move further upstream and look at the prevention of the more acute behavioral health concerns that we see showing up in the emergency department and in schools and in other places. And really giving people the tools and strategies and resources that they need, again, to have that respite and that deep breath, and not to make that another clinical office that somebody's got to go to, but to have that embedded within trusted community institutions. And then the other area of priority in the school health space, I've spent quite a bit of time and effort thinking about school health over the last decade or so, is really about making sure that particularly for the children in greatest need, that we've got a comprehensive set of wraparound supports for children in schools. We've done quite a bit of work locally and statewide on school-based healthcare, and have been really gratified to see more full-service school-based health centers opening up within schools across St. Louis and across the state, really. But children need behavioral health, social needs through social workers and others within schools. They need support for their nutrition, their physical activity. And we've really been guided by a model out of the CDC called the Whole School, Whole Community, Whole Child model, that looks at a comprehensive set of supports that should be available in schools, including the health and wellness of the teachers and administrators and other staff within the building. So that's really the logic and emphasis in the school health space.
Thank you so much. And with a background in education and administration, I definitely value the work that you're doing, and I think it's necessary and needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And building off that, talking about school-based healthcare, we all, understand that, since the pandemic, I feel that one of the hot topics of conversation has been the social determinants of health. And access to quality education is one of the 5 pillars when we think about the social determinants of health. But for the sake of the conversation, don't want to assume everybody knows the 5 pillars of the social determinants of health. Can you describe those pillars and how it relates to poverty?
So social determinants of health are the ways that we think about how health outcomes are shaped by where people live, learn, work, play, pray, and live their lives. So what we know is that in terms of health outcomes in particular, a job is a health intervention. A quality education is a health intervention. A safe place to live in terms of housing and access to food are all health interventions. And we don't often think about that in terms of health disparities and health equity. We tend to think that it's all driven by healthcare and the access to doctors and medicine and hospitals. And it turns out only about 20% of the explanation of population health outcomes are explained by access to medical care. The other 80% is really about the social and economic and environmental context that people find themselves in. Poverty is a uniquely harmful risk factor for negative health outcomes, negative life outcomes. And we know that the insult of poverty, particularly early in life, really continues to have its impact even into adulthood. And even after a child who grew up in poverty escapes poverty as an adult, those impacts continue. So when we talk about the social determinants of health, we're really trying to have a conversation about those contexts. You may have heard the analogy of the babies in the stream and people trying to fish the babies out of the stream, and the necessity of going further upstream to understand who's dropping the babies into the stream to begin with. And that's what we need to, that's how we think about, and when we talk about those upstream determinants. And it's important as well, and you heard a little bit about this in our own pillars for community health improvement for BJC. That role of an anchor institution, investing in community, looking at our hiring and our purchasing with diverse businesses, and our investment in community economic development is one pillar of that strategy. But we also have to look at, I was gratified to hear in your own video, the strategic partnerships that need to be in place. The work that has to be coordinated across organizations and institutions and sectors in society. And that work has to be informed by the lived experiences of people who are experiencing the issues that we're talking about. So we can't come up with those solutions in our offices and then wonder why people don't want to use the solution. We have to work with people who are the end users of those solutions and co-creating and co-designing what those look like. But the third pillar, and I think it's important, and we have to get even more facile at using this particular lever, is policy. So much of what shapes whether or not someone finds themselves in poverty has to do with policy. We know that millions of households were removed from poverty with the stimulus funding that happened as a result of the pandemic. And there's a real threat that many of those households will fall back into policy or poverty rather, as those policies lapse. So we've got to, I often say we've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got to be able to talk about multiple dimensions of what actually determines poor economic outcomes as well as poor health outcomes.
Thank you so much for that. So when you're talking a lot about school, even school performance, there are so many variables that impact students' performance in school. But two we want to highlight is mental health and family conditions. Can you speak on that, on how those two entities impact school performance in students?
I have a turn of phrase that I've started using, and I think it's important. A child who can't see, can't hear, can't breathe, has been traumatized, doesn't know what they're going to eat tonight, doesn't know where they're going to sleep tonight, doesn't have the opportunity to take advantage of instruction, even if it's the most brilliant, well-designed curriculum in the world. And none of us would either. So we have to, when we talk about education, we've become almost obsessed with testing children and looking at their academic achievement without first asking, are you all right? And before we get to reading, writing, and arithmetic, we have to have a conversation, not only a conversation, but an infrastructure and a system that's set up to respond to the needs that children bring to school and go back home and face and struggle with after school. We can't explain that we can't expect that those 7 hours that they spend in the school building is actually all that is driving their outcomes. So when we talk about mental health, for instance, children who are struggling with depression, with anxiety, with the very real consequences of trauma, either in their own homes and families or in their community. I've talked with colleagues who mention that it's not uncommon for children to witness a shooting on the way to school from the school bus. And the thing we have to remember, particularly for our children who are facing the most challenges, is, you know, it was mentioned that I'm a psychologist by training, even though I haven't seen a patient in a long time. But when I was trained to deal with trauma, part of the intervention was to tell people, you're no longer in that traumatic experience. It was to tell the veteran that cardboard box by the roadside is not an IED, to try and give them that sense of reality that you're no longer in Fallujah, or to tell the victim of violence that is no longer your situation. Very often for the children we're talking about, that's not true. Children are living in trauma. They're living in risk, as a dear friend of mine used to say, rather than at risk. And to have multiple traumas and to not be able to say, you're no longer in that reality, you're no longer in that environment, creates an additional challenge and a need for additional support. And the family unit has to be part of that conversation. And it's why we're creating these hubs with support for caregivers as well. Children don't exist in a vacuum. They don't spontaneously arrive. They're part of family systems, but we have to also support those family systems. Too often the attitude is, well, parents ought to be doing a better job, or ought to be dispatching their responsibilities more competently. And, you know, you can't do that without a job, without a place to live, without very often your own mental health and substance abuse supports and resources. So we have to think about it more holistically.
Dr. Purnell, you mentioned the need for additional support. And so my question to you, sir, is, you know, how do you see local young leaders in the community working together to help address these issues and providing that extra layer of support?
I'm very adamant that this work alongside schools in particular has to be in addition. So this is not work that we add onto the plate of already overtaxed teachers and school administrators. These supports that I'm talking about have to be communities standing alongside schools. And young leaders have a role to play in terms of where you work and whether or not those workplaces can make a commitment to a particular school or an entire school district in terms of, not just volunteer hours, but financial support. Young leaders, to the extent that they're working in the nonprofit sector, are probably already offering some sort of support to schools, but ask whether or not that's coordinated support. So for instance, I know the most about some of the work that happens in St. Louis public schools, and school administrators are so desperate for any resource for children that you might have dozens of programs operating, none of whom are speaking to each other, and very few of whom are collecting actionable data that you can use to determine what those outcomes are. So there's an opportunity for collaboration. I think you're also part of schools to the extent that your parents with children or have other children in your family unit. So getting involved, being part of the PTO, asking questions about what are the mental health supports and other supports that children have, even if your children don't need them, is an important way to get involved. Run for school board, become part of the decision-making process. Those are some of the ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, and as a follow-up to that, what are some very easy or low-hanging just fruit options of what can be done as local young leaders to help prepare youth to be successful in college and work and in life? So in addition to those things, what are some either hands-on or but how can we build those three areas of college, work, and life?
The research is pretty clear that even in the most challenging situations, if a child has a consistent, persistent adult in their life, and it doesn't need to be a parent, it just needs to be someone that they can depend on, they're going to have better outcomes. So if you are willing to act as a mentor, that's one of the most powerful things you can do, but only do it if you're willing to be consistent and available and in there for the long haul. I came across a program, I think it was out of Texas, a few years back that struck me as just a brilliant way of doing this. They on purpose would work with the lowest performing 25% of a high school class. And I think it started in 9th grade. And there were a team of mentors. There was about 7 or 8 mentors for each of these young people. And they would not give up on these kids. They would tell them, we're going to see you through college. And even if you give up on you, we are not giving up on you. And I think part of the brilliance of the team approach was that it wasn't all on you as a mentor. If you couldn't show up for something, there were 7 or 8 other people who could show up for that child. But there was a team of people that individual knew not only had, and this is consistent with our research in developmental psychology as well, not only had high expectations, we will get you through college, but also had high levels of support and warmth and caring to go along with those high expectations. It's not rocket science. And it's what has allowed most of us to have the success that we had in life. There was at least one adult who was there, who was consistent, who cared about us. It might have been a teacher, it might have been a coach, it might have been, if we were blessed enough to have parents in that role, other adults in our families, aunts, uncles, but it was somebody who believed in us and supported us. And you can play that role. You don't have to be related to a young person to play that role.
Great. When we look at your overall experience, how have you seen communities come together to create lasting system change?
It's a work in progress. I know the most about St. Louis, and the reality is that it took a tragedy for us to begin to think about system change in a serious way. It took Michael Brown being shot and killed in Ferguson in August of 2014. That what we had was a framework for understanding what those inequities looked like. So some of the work that I did prior to my current role that was mentioned in the introduction, I led a team of researchers at Washington University in St. Louis and St. Louis University in creating a report called For the Sake of All on the health and well-being of African Americans in St. Louis. And one of the things that we reported on, probably the thing that everybody still remembers from that report, was an 18-year gap in life expectancy at birth between two zip codes in the St. Louis region. And when you look at the differences between those zip codes, 6 to 8 times the unemployment rate and the poverty rate in the zip code with the lower life expectancy, 1/6 of the median income of the more affluent zip code, and of course 95% African American population. And the rest of the report was about explaining how that came to be, not just from the standpoint of current social and economic conditions, but a history of residential segregation, of discrimination in employment and housing, and any of a number of other factors. And then a set of recommendations about what we need to do about it, including investing, and we haven't talked as much today about this, but investing in high quality early childhood interventions and programs as a precursor to educational achievement and attainment, but also looking at health within schools and a comprehensive set of supports for children in schools. Systems level change requires that someone has the job of managing coordination and collaboration. Most communities do not lack for organizations and services and systems. What they lack for is the connective tissue that brings those things together in an efficient and an effective way. And you have to be able to be driven by high quality data that allows you to pinpoint where are the pain and pressure points, where should we be deploying resources, and how do we decide together as a community that we're committed to deploying those resources in the places where there is the greatest need, which is what equity means, essentially. You've got to be committed to that in order to make systems change work. And I think the final thing I'd say is, and I observed this in some of the protest movement that came up after Michael Brown was shot and killed, there was a kind of allergy to leadership. This notion that leadership had somehow gone out of style and was passé, and nobody wanted to stand up and say that they were a leader. Leadership is absolutely necessary. It will not go out of style. It may need to look different. It's not the same leadership of the mid-20th century civil rights movement, where men primarily took the lead to the exclusion of the prominence of the role of women and any of a number of other identities who were not represented. But leadership is absolutely necessary. The ability to articulate a vision, to rally people to a cause, to instill a sense of hope, doesn't go out of fashion as long as we remain a social species whose claim to fame is our ability to cooperate.
Thank you for that. So as leaders that are desiring to create change and put our hands to the plow, if we were to create an advocacy agenda that would create systems of change, where should we begin?
You all don't ask small questions, do you?
We're trying to do big work.
I think you have to start where people live. Your advocacy agenda has to be about really a comprehensive set of supports where people live. I often say we don't have an innovation problem, we have a distribution problem. And what I mean by that is, I don't know what Greensboro's most affluent community is, but I'm sure that they have figured out a way to get their children into the opportunities necessary to be successful in the next generation. And it's not rocket science how they do that. We just haven't decided as a society that everybody deserves that. So in my mind, you know, we're not at a loss as to how to do this. I can tell you in the St. Louis region, those affluent families and communities have been recycling access to resources and privilege for several generations. So what needs to be replicated is it a set of supports that allow people to be successful. That has to do with stable and safe housing. It has to do with very often when you look at affluent families, it's not that their children don't have problems, it's that you can have a problem and it will get fixed for you. You can fall down and fail multiple times and there will be somebody there to catch you and put you in the right direction. So I don't think we need to go out in search of these newfangled or exotic ways of intervening. We have to decide and determine that those same kinds of resources need to be in place in areas that have fewer resources. So it is about community and economic development and housing. It is about intervening as early as you can in the development of a child, truly prenatally, making sure that that the environment in the womb is one that is conducive to health and well-being, and that the person who is carrying that child has the resources that they need to be successful. So it has to do with early childhood. It has to do with quality schools. It has to do with the safety of environments and jobs. One of the things that worries me about some of the place-based interventions that I see is that it's wonderful to build nice houses and some shops on the street, but where are the people going to work? And that has to be part of what that ecosystem looks like. That's why I'm excited about work that we've got going on in St. Louis called the St. Louis Anchor Action Network, which is a number of anchor institutions who've come together and said, within this 22 zip code footprint that's majority Black and at least 20% rates of poverty, we're going to commit to increasing our hiring. We're going to commit to increasing our purchasing with diverse businesses within that footprint. And we're getting closer to committing to impact investment, which BJC has already done. We've put our money, we've leveraged our balance sheet by creating these relationships with financial institutions, such that we expect, as a result of our providing you with capital, that there will be lending for small business generation, for personal loans and real estate loans within that focused geography. And that's the way you begin to deploy resources in such a way that those resources are available for the kind of economic and community development that you want to see. It's both a big P policy advocacy and making sure that there are government policies and programs in place, but also little p policy. What are the policies of your workplace? Do they focus on hiring in the areas where there's greatest need? Do they buy their goods and services from Black and brown owned businesses within your local community? Those are questions that you can ask as a young leader and help to put in place. I hope that answered the question. That was a long-winded response.
It did. Thank you. It really did.
No, Dr. Purnell, we thank you for this time. I know we're coming close to time of close, but we just want to thank you so much for sharing with us today. We didn't have any questions in the chat. However, we did have a lot of responses from individuals saying that, you know, the work that you're doing is amazing. It's much needed for our youth. Love the initiatives for the youth and families. Had some early childhood educators in the chat, just saying how they agree with you and how everything starts at the prenatal stages. So we definitely thank you for your time, and everyone that's on the call. We sincerely hope that you have a better understanding of your United Way's impact and the role we all can play in preparing youth to be successful in college, work, and life. And on behalf of the young leaders, Dr. Purnell, we just want to thank you for joining us today. So if we all can just give them a virtual round of applause for sharing with us today. Before we go, just want to make mention of some upcoming events that you guys could go to the United Way's website to sign up for. On August the 10th, we'll be having another virtual Theories of Change that'll be hosted by the African American Leadership Affinity Group. September 1st, the 100th campaign kickoff, CEO breakfast, and the unveiling of the Live United Centennial Monument. I'm a huge hip hop fan. We have KRS-One coming to Greensboro for a concert series that'll be sponsored by the United Way. So please go out and purchase those tickets today. It's gonna be a great time. And there's a host of other events happening all throughout the month of August and September and through October, and also as we get more into the fall seasons. So please go out there and sign up and register and purchase your tickets for all these events. But before we do go, I do want to give honor and reverence and respect to our CEO, Mr. Kari Garvin, if you just want to have any final closing comments before we all head out.
You're very thoughtful. The honor and reverence and respect not needed, but thank you for that. I just want to publicly thank you, Dr. Jason Purnell, for really enlightening us today. I mean, I feel that personally. As Marcus pointed out, there were many comments made as you were speaking along the way in the chat. And even though we did not visually see your video, we heard the content of it. But what we missed in that, you more than made up for in your remarks. So thank you, number one, for making time for us today. But thank you for really the way that you are leaving your footprints, in the industry, as it were, through your research and your work. We really appreciate that. And really has helped to inspire where we're headed and the way we think about the good work. Do want to close to say thanks to all of you who have attended, but also including our board members. Our board chair, Mrs. Davita Martin, is online. I also saw Phil McCall, and I think Jose Sandoval, and I don't know if we have any other board members, but to you all, thank you also for carving out time to be with us today. All right, so with that, I give it back to you or Marcus or whoever is going to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you all. I just ask that you all to continue to support United Way and the great work that this organization is doing in the community. Let's continue to invest in our community. And again, thank you all for joining us today. And we look forward to a bright future in the city of Greensboro. So take care and bye-bye. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Purnell.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.